College football playoff chaos scenarios, at this point, they're inevitable. We just have to ask ourselves, to what level does the chaos reach? Is it a 6? Is it an 8? Is it a 9.95? So 3 scenarios that I've got my eye on right now. And remember, for everyone saying it's going to work itself out, we got 2 weeks left. I don't think it's going to work itself out. I'm just going to be real with you. I don't think it's all going to work itself out at this point. So I want to begin tonight by talking to you about what we would call the 10-2 conundrum. The 10-2 conundrum is pretty self-explanatory. It's this logjam of teams. And we're going to get some combination of these teams. There are too many to have this all wiped out and for it to, quote-unquote, take care of itself. So right now, realistically, we could see the following teams finish with a 10-2 record. Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, Brigham Young, Utah, Miami, Vandy, USC, Michigan. Certainly not all of them are. You could shave half of that list off, and you're still going to have a logjam there, especially as it relates to the conference title conundrum, which I'm going to bring up in just a second. So imagine, what was that, Jesse? 2, 4, that's 12 teams that realistically could be in this mix. I mean, one thing has to happen, or maybe a couple of things, or nothing else has to happen, and some of these teams just need to win out. So the first question on my mind is, what happens to the Notre Dame, Miami comparative pool thing at that point? Like, how close are they put together? Oregon, USC? You know, if USC wins this Saturday, is Oregon just knocked all the way out? Can they resurrect their hopes by beating Washington the next week? I'd be very interested in where Brigham Young is compared to Utah because they beat them. What about Alabama and Vanderbilt? What about USC and Michigan? Remember, if Michigan beats Ohio State next week, well, first off, if they take care of Maryland and then they beat Ohio State, they're going to the Big Ten championship game. And so they'd be 10-2, 10-3 at worst. Where is USC in relation to Michigan? Because USC has the head-to-head over Michigan. It'll all work itself out, they tell me. I don't believe you. I'm wagging the index finger. I straight up don't believe you. The next one we would call the Week 14 Mega Riser chaos scenario. So the Week 14 Mega Riser scenario would involve teams like Texas or Vanderbilt or Georgia Tech or maybe Michigan. Teams that play really highly ranked opponents at the end. Teams that, if they pull off an upset, and especially if they pull off a resounding upset, could insert this wild, unforeseen data point at the very last minute into the committee's hands, and we're sitting there on Selection Sunday wondering, wow, what are they about to do with this? Like, what's going to happen? So Texas A&M goes to Texas. Texas is 17th right now. I certainly think it's a long shot for them to make the playoff at 3 losses. However, what if they just beat A&M 35-10 or something like that? Just like a really, really weird, emphatic, resounding upset. And then their season's done, and they're 9-3, and they just got one of the best wins of the season. How high could they jump? At the very least, it would be plus, since it's Texas, that drum would get beat for an entire week. What about Vandy? So Vandy goes to Tennessee. Let's say Tennessee beats Florida this week, which is a chore. Let's say they beat Florida this week. And so you've got a really, really strong Tennessee team on the road, and Vandy beats them, and they, beat them pretty good. They should just beat them and then say, we're 10-2, we're from the SEC, let us in. But especially if it's resounding. Hey, really quick timeout. We'll get right back to the video. Do me one favor. Make sure you're subscribed. It helps us keep the show free. It helps us keep the lights on. It helps us keep doing college football year-round, and we appreciate it. All right, back to the video. How high can Vanderbilt jump? What if Georgia Tech upsets Georgia? Twofold. Number one, it's Georgia's second loss, so they join the ranks of the 2-loss conundrum group. And number two, Georgia Tech, who is at 16 right now, what if they jump up to number 9 or number 10? Because they're in the ACC championship game, possibly. But if they're in the ACC championship game and they're like 13th and they lose, they're not going to the playoff. But if they're 9th or 10th and they lose the ACC championship game, that's a whole different conversation because the committee has talked about not punishing teams who otherwise would be in the playoff for playing in a conference title game. So that's something to watch. And of course, Ohio State and Michigan, Like Michigan's the best position because Michigan has an opportunity to get the best win anyone's had all year by beating Ohio State at the very end of the year. And you could make Ohio State look wobbly, but also you could get a win. And that would be your 5th straight. So aside from just the absolute 10 out of 10 volume on Ryan Day and Ohio State and all that would entail, we remember what that sounds like. We've heard it multiple years in a row. Michigan would be going to the Big Ten championship game, possibly, depending on how the tiebreaker works out. That has a lot to do with USC. But they're at 18 right now. Now, they beat Maryland this week. It doesn't look like they'll jump a whole lot from that. But if they beat Ohio State, that's a 10-2 Michigan who would have wins over Ohio State, but they'd also have a win over Washington. Their losses would be to Oklahoma and USC, who are 2 top 15-ish teams right now. That would be a playoff resume. Just crazy stuff that could happen. And then number 3, the conference title conundrum. So the conference title conundrum is as you're trying to figure out what that playoff bubble is going to look like, you know, the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, like that range. Well, remember, we could have Alabama go to the SEC championship game and lose. We could have Brigham Young go to the Big 12 championship game and lose. We could have Michigan go to the Big 10 championship game and lose. And the reason that's important is because I think Bama will be in the top 10 if they beat Auburn. So if they go to the SEC championship game, they'll be in the top 10. Brigham Young, where will they be? Because they're number 11 right now. So if they win the remaining games, will they be a top 10 team entering that Saturday? It's a very important note to be aware of. Michigan, if they beat Ohio State, do they vault up into the top 10? Because if any of them are in the top 10, and I say top 10 instead of top 12, because that 11-12 spot, it's kind of artificial because you got to have a conference champion there, you got to have a G5 team in there, and that's probably the spots they hold. So if you're trying to get an at-large spot because you're not going to win your conference, you need to be 10 or higher going into conference championship Saturday, because if you lose that game, then we got to test the committee and see whether they're going to drop you out. They claim that is unlikely to happen. I'm claiming for them it's unlikely to happen. But if we have 3 examples of that, if Brigham Young and Michigan and Bama all somehow got themselves in the top 10 and then they all went and lost on that Saturday, is someone dropping out? Or are you just punishing, well, not punishing, are you victimizing some other at-large teams who have an equal number of wins but one fewer loss because their added loss came on a day where the other ones didn't play? I know it sounds complicated. Also, you know, a real fun side project there. Everyone's talking about Notre Dame as it relates to Miami right now. Well, what if we get that kind of logjam? Notre Dame's not invincible. Like, they're not immune from being affected by that either.